Yay.
Happy Third Thursday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be talking all about the world of cybersecurity today, how it affects the automation industry, but also how it's becoming more and more important over time. Before we dive into the whole conversation that I've got, I want to do a quick roundtable of introductions. I already see some comments coming in of people telling us that they're here and that they're ready for the session. So do a quick introduction for yourself as well. Let us know where you're joining from. But Christina, I'm going to come to you if you could give everybody an introduction.
Sure. So my name's Christina Shannon. I've been in the technology and the security world for roughly 15 years, security plus, and then 20 years plus technology. I've been doing security, though, since hard tokens were the default option for multi-factor. Grew up at Fortune 1 retailer, Walmart. That's where I always would credit for growing my wings. And then made my way, spent some time in oil and gas, financial services, retail again. And this is, I've implemented a security program for organizations 3 times. So, and I've been in the head role 3 times.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I do see again some people popping in saying hello. Tell us where you're coming from. We always like to know where the audience is and what's going on. We are having just a little bit of technical difficulties with Ralph getting connected. So Kieran, I'm going to come to you to give your introduction, and then hopefully we'll have him on with us as well.
Fantastic. Look, I was laughing there, Christine. I should pretend I know nothing about physical tokens. Unfortunately, I do, or fortunately, I'm never too sure which it is. But been in the tech business industry for about the last 27 years. So I've seen .com come and go. I was actually handling the year 2000 bugs. I helped set up ISO 27001 in an org many, many years ago. I've ran data science teams. I've ran technology teams. And the bit that I specialize in the moment is intelligent automation. Been at it 20 years. My first robot was in the year 2000, I think. Gosh. But been in the IA, RPA spaces, is currently known for about the last 7 years. Really enjoy this space, this particular area of cyber. Not everybody says that, but I genuinely do. The world is moving more digital, and a bit like us having locks in the front doors of our offices, now that everybody is moving online digitally, we need those cyber locks. So looking forward to giving you some of my personal views today around this really, really fascinating topic.
Great. So while again we're waiting, we also have Ralph joining us, who I think for most of the people that are going to be dialing in today know him and all his memes as well as his cyber experience. We'll let him do his introduction when he's able to get all set up here on the audio at least, and maybe the camera too. Oh, there he is. Okay, we're going to throw you right in, Ralph.
Well,
let you go ahead really and do a quick introduction.
Oh, good. Yeah, so hi, everyone. I was just trying to fix my cam, so always an issue with Skype, Zoom, yeah. So hi, everyone. Ralph Diaz. I'm practice leader at HFS Research. And really my area is digital trust, cybersecurity. So hopefully I'm going to be able to provide a bit of insights around the market and why cybersecurity is so important. Great to be here.
Thank you for coming and joining us, both of you. And Ralph, your background looks wonderful, so it was worth the wait. Don't worry, we're here for it.
It's real. Yeah, it's real. Some people ask me if it's a picture. It's real.
It would have been funny,
we should play that game sometime. I do see, just again, we've got some folks joining us from India. I see Colombia. So we've got people from all over the world joining us today, and we're so glad to have you here. So Ralph, I'm going to come to you, especially with this researcher hat on, to talk a little bit about maybe how do we define the idea of cybersecurity. Going back to all of our memes and our jokes, it can be quite the big idea. So maybe breaking it down into a way that's approachable for everybody to understand.
Yeah, good question. I think it's how to make it simple. Yeah, I think cybersecurity really, when you think about it, it seems like a complex panacea of tech services, a huge spectrum, and it's a big spectrum. Yeah, you can't really say I do cybersecurity. Yeah, I mean it's a huge coverage. But really, if I need to explain really in plain English why the importance of cybersecurity, yeah, or what it is, if you really think about it, it's pretty much the protection of electronic data and information. That's really in the essence of what cybersecurity, trying to protect your data, you as an individual, but also the company trying to protect their own data. And obviously data resides in systems, in network, in endpoints, whatever across the organization. And that's really what you need to protect ultimately. So deploying these kind of tech services around, processes, people, but ultimately it's all about protecting your data. So think about cybersecurity really as a defense of your electronic system or devices, computers, cell phones, servers, networks from malicious attacks. And that's where really the essence of cybersecurity is. And obviously why it's important nowadays, because it's not only about, I would say, protecting your data, but it's really because of everything is connected. Nowadays, I'm connected to my friends, yeah, my colleagues, my mother, but like companies also connected to their customers, to their partners. So it's not anymore about securing your own data, but really securing the data of your entire ecosystem. And that's why it becomes so important, because everything is interconnected. When a breach happens somewhere, probably the hackers has an open door to start moving laterally somewhere else. And that's where really the breach become quite huge. Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important, because of this hyper connectivity we have, where attackers now have a huge perimeter of attack and they can pretty much navigate whatever they want. Yeah. And why it's so important, I would say also it's because actually cybersecurity is rapidly moving toward cyber crimes are really rapidly evolving into democratization. Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about democratization of automation, low code. Kieran, you know where I'm going, but I think democratization of cyber crime is even bigger. I mean, crime as a service, ransom as a service, phishing as a service, that's becoming a huge market, and it's quite alarming, to be honest, where any person in the world with zero technical acumen can actually subscribe to a ransomware as a service offering via the dark web. And you can get 24/7 support, you can get bundled offering, you can get a lot of support in there, and actually you start financing pretty much attacks where people actually contribute to actually feed those cyber criminals. And then when they achieve something, they pay you back really what you gave. Yeah, so it's a bit of a reward. Also, it can be a monthly salary, a percentage of the proceeds when they do a ransomware. So also democratization is so big that cybersecurity becomes so important. So for me, really the two big one is interconnectivity, large ecosystem. It's not anymore about your data, and democratization. Pretty much everyone now can trigger an attack without having any cybersecurity knowledge, and that's what's really worrying.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just blew my mind. I guess I didn't realize that there was like this whole democratization happening of it as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm over here complaining about multi-factor authentication, not realizing quite the level of evil that is happening as we're tied to technologically advancing everything in the world. So I think that actually is a really nice feed then into the question that I've got for you, Christina. So as we look at specifically the automation landscape and transforming organizations, how does that tie into opening us up to more risk when we look at things like, again, automation or IoT and all of these different things that we are hoping are going to help us get further, but maybe opening us up for more risk?
I would say that it's a lot like most new things or new, revolutions, or I got the cloud's a trend now, big data. A lot of the new technology type trends that come out, they don't really start with security by design as with that type of awareness, right? And so a lot of times what you're doing is you're coming in after the fact, or you're coming in to basically say, hey, did you know what I would say is that in today's world, ransomware, right? That's kind of changed the scene for a lot of folks in this space. You can, when you're interconnecting things that now have intelligence that can talk to each other, you're also setting yourself up for somebody else to be able to control those things that are interconnected and can talk to each other. So basic security hygiene, such as how are you accessing those softwares that are doing your process controls technology in your factory, that is actually controlling a manufacturing process, right? Or if you're digitizing something that's manual, how are you looking at the access, whether it's a system, whether it's an environment. There's just so much to think about when you think about this space and why it's important. I'd also say that this space is one where they were doing technology before IT became a thing, before the internet became a thing. So, and like the oil and gas, the manufacturing industries where I had experience, they were talking about things like ArcNet. And so I think a lot of times in this space too, it's helping people come to the table on what is the IoT, what's that really mean? And for me, it's bringing together the people, because I don't know that's happened yet. So we're interconnecting, we're automating, and I think security is a little slower to the scene. So, and it's definitely time to catch up.
So I did see a question come in that was specific to Ralph, but I think we can open this up to everybody. So do we think that the risk is more tied to cybersecurity awareness or the actual attacks themselves? Maybe this is a chicken or the egg, and then I think this will feed nicely into the question that I've got for you, Kieran. But what are your guys' thoughts on that? Is it more the lack of awareness or the actual attacks getting more sophisticated?
I think so. For me, I think it's the arrival of ransomware. And I think it's the fact that, like, if you talk 10 years ago, you're talking data exfiltration, and that's all you're doing. You're looking at what's my framework, what's my gaps against my different controls, and what am I worried about? I mean, in today's world, it's you're getting a vulnerability exploited and some malware dropped, and now you've got a ransomware attack that's shutting down business operations, or that's changing the temperature on a furnace that can eat up your batch. I mean, there's some pretty severe consequences, I think, in the types of attacks that are happening today that are much different than where they were 10 years ago. So I'd say attacks.
Kind of funny.
I would say, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Ralph. Go on ahead.
I would say awareness, yeah. But attack, obviously, yeah, we have huge sophistication of attacks. Absolutely, that's undeniable, yeah. But I think also it's awareness, really, and for me, it's about really where everyone is struggling is pretty much how to create this cybersecurity conscious culture, make it really in the fabric of the organization, rather than being a kind of point in time exercise where you need to do XYZ courses and just click on the next button and approve your certification or your training. Yeah. And I think definitely there is, for me, two things around the awareness or the culture. Yeah. I really think that employees or people needs to have a tailored and engaging experience, yeah, with cybersecurity. And I think that's where a lot of enterprises have struggled, is really being able to embed way more storytelling into awareness campaign, bring security to life, increase the level of engagement of employees, because to be honest, it's pretty much zero, yeah, nowadays, or there is not so much engagement or so much really excitement, yeah, in being part of this campaign. So I think this needs to change, the engagement, how senior leadership, how cybersecurity function engage with end users, yeah.
What I'm hearing is not only has the risk increased because the attacks are getting more impactful, but our awareness leads to those attacks. So it's, again, almost like that chicken or the egg, which is worse, and where can we point to the actual problem? Kieran, I do want to come to you with our next question, and I think this ties nicely to that idea as well. But and Ralph mentioned this a little in his first response, but it's more like the threat surface at this point is more than just our own individual data and keeping our own identity secure. Can you talk a little bit about, like, dive into that idea a little bit more of what that fully looks like now that we are at this level of potential attacks?
Okay, well, let me try and explain that phrase, threat surface, because we're at danger because we understand this area of assuming everybody else is. And that goes back to your point a moment ago, that not everybody has the same understanding of cyber that we have. So folks are walking around with their phones every day that are possibly and probably hacked without actually realizing it. And that leads to a a question of how much do we need people actually involved. It's not their day job, but they need a level of awareness, just like you need a level of awareness to protect your car and your vehicle and your home. When we talk about threat surface, we're talking to lead into what Christina was saying there, is that the world is becoming more digital. You know, got a mobile phone, easily hacked, got a PC, hacked, email, website, addresses. If there's an IoT device sitting on a network somewhere, that can be hacked. If you are connected, and most organizations and most of us in the world are actually part of one bigger network, supply chain, whatever you want to do. So it's no longer about just our own network being secure, our own devices or people. And remember, sometimes not through deliberate action, but our people are very often our weakest link because they open up emails. You know, they're socially engineered. Some of them are massively sophisticated. It's not the fact that I actually am the cousin of a prince who will donate millions of dollars to me anymore. They're really, really sophisticated hacks because people have worked out how we're going to deal with these things. So all of a sudden the world has become really complicated, and that I have a lot of empathy with people. How do I protect myself if, for an example, I'm a charity and someone is hacking me because a large business that I deal with actually funds me? And that's a bit, we sometimes assume that it's script kiddies sitting in their bedroom somewhere, you know, downloading tools that are readily accessible, as Ralph mentioned earlier on, to perform hacks. You know, they'll mess around, they'll do stuff, and there's some significant instances of where folks have hacked NASA, big banks, or whatever else. And those are the ones you find out about. Because remember, a lot of organizations don't actually say a thing because they don't want people to be aware. And that brings back what you were saying earlier on, that they can be hacked, because that encourages more people to hack them or find out more about them. Or also, you know, for insurance purposes, a whole host of reasons they don't really want to say it, can't say it. I thought I seen something about the US now starting to mandate organizations that they had to admit to that, which for me, the more you talk about it, the more you admit it, the more you're actually willing to protect yourself. But it's not just script kiddies doing this. There are governments who act nefariously, who are attempting to get intellectual property and gain commercial, military advantage, and there's large amounts of dollars being put in by national governments. You'll have read the press to see who they are. You will have also seen that this is, you know, organized crime gangs who are attempting to attack all those devices that I mentioned earlier on. And again, as I said, it's not just your phone, your email, your web, your computer, but it's actually going to all those IoT devices, and it's going to all those different partners in your supply chain and attempting to infiltrate what you're doing. Because the truth behind all this is there's a great deal of money out of intellectual property. There's a great deal of money in banks. And what Christina was saying earlier on, and they did it to the Irish Health Organization, if they shut you down, you are going to be willing to pay a great deal of money, and then you end up paying a lot of Bitcoin or something else to criminal gangs. You're making an absolute fortune a year on this. So the question is, how do we actually help people protect themselves by putting in systems and applications and training and learning? How much do they have to do? How much should be coordinated by us individually, by our businesses, by our governments, by our ISPs? This is a big problem, and it's going to require big solutions. And I don't know if we as a society have all those answers yet, because we're not as coordinated as we need to be.
So again, just dropping lessons on me of like the severity of all of it. So Christina, I want to come to you to talk about, okay, so when we've been talking a lot about the threat, but we haven't really quantified as an organization. We know it could potentially cost a lot of money, but when we look at what is the actual impact to a company, whether that's how long does it take them to recover, how much money can it potentially take them to solve the problem. Can you talk a little bit about what that actually looks like when it strikes an organization?
Yeah, and I would definitely say that it varies depending upon industry. Are you a small, medium business? And then what was the motivation, right? Was there a motivation, or was it just an accidental hack, right? And I'd also say that the impact to business operations, i.e. the ransomware attacks that's come on the scene the last 10 years, I think that's changed the game too in terms of the average breach cost. But just on an average, I mean, small, medium business 10 years ago was like 500,000 average per breach, and like $1 million, $2 million for a corporation. And today that's doubled and tripled. I believe it's like 3 million for a large corporation and roughly 1.5 on average for a small, medium-sized business. And I'd say, you know, when you're thinking about an impact to business operations, that's where I think you see the dollars start happening or rising really quick in terms of the cost of doing business because you're not doing business, right? So each day you're down, that's impact to your revenue. It's impact to your customer base. I mean, the people are depending upon you. One time we did a penetration test and a risk assessment, which is a penetration test. And one of my, I spent 3 years in manufacturing and as a CIO, CISO, and loved the opportunity, but it also highlighted to me how much that world needs help. But anyway, we did a risk assessment and we wanted to understand what was the risk of production disruption impact. Right? What was the risk of production disruption, the likelihood, and then what would be the impact? So we did the penetration test, and then within a day, the ethical hacker was able to basically exploit a phishing email, utilize a phishing email to gain access, and then he exploited a vulnerability using exploited vulnerability to gain further access, domain admin access, and then was able to make it to the process controls SCADA system, and then basically, sent us a print screen and said, how far do you want us to go? And we had measured that, and if they could have actually changed the temperature. We got a lot of the business feedback to quantify it, and if they had changed the temperature, then it'd have been just for that one plant like $200,000 just for having the actual batch, what you're making being impacted, and it takes a couple of days to get that out. So you're thinking $200,000 every couple of days for just one plant.
So now I want to take us, so thank you for sharing that. And again, kind of quantifying that, because I think sometimes when we think about it, we're like, oh yeah, of course, like big banks will lose a lot of money, or the pipeline thing caused a lot of issues for the US and our gas supply. But like those are big deals versus what it can do to an individual business. So I do want to shift now, Ralph, to talk about maybe where we're seeing organizations start to combat some of this. And based on the research that you've done, maybe can you point us in the direction of where we're seeing most of the investment going to protect organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did a big study around the service providers, cybersecurity service providers, and how they are helping their enterprise clients. And really there are pretty much 5 cybersecurity service offerings that are booming at the moment. Booming meaning that service providers are selling a lot. Why? Because enterprise clients are buying a lot. so really the first one is really number one by far, is around threat detection and response. I think that's really where and moving really to the next level of threat intelligence and response, which is also around threat hunting. I think companies clearly understand now that it's not anymore about defending their perimeter that actually don't exist anymore, because there is no more perimeter as such, but it's really going into the offensive, being able really to hunt for threats, hunt for key risk indicators, and really try to understand and try to understand really or have an early warning system around increasing risk exposure in certain areas. And that's where they can go intervene before actually an event happen and then an incident happen. I think that's where pretty much everyone is trying to position, going into the offensive and not waiting for something to happen then to respond. Cloud security, obviously, all over the place. I saw Niraj on the chat posted something. Big investment. As you said, clearly what our study has shown is that, yes, tech is here, but I think still companies are struggling to implement policies across their multi-cloud environments, but more importantly, monitoring the adherence to the policies. And that's where I think that they're struggling. And when I say policies, big example is really, for example, configuration settings that are aligned to your central policies. They are struggling at the moment. And that's why we see also the emergence of new product segment like CSPM around cloud security posture management, being able to monitor configuration setting, recalibrate setting on demand so that everything is really aligned to your policy. And I think that's quite important. And the number 3, I'm not going to go to the 5, but number 3 really came again, digital identity and access management. still a big topic. So much investment have gone in, more investment coming in again. Why? For many reasons. For first of all, the proliferation of non-human identities. When you move to the cloud, well, you quickly realize that you have way more non-human identities than human. And actually, those non-human identities are highly privileged by nature to be elastic, as the cloud wants. And that's where the attackers are going to go and probably start focusing on to gain then access to the network. Yeah.
Mhm.
And also the OT and IT conversions. Yeah, absolutely. That's something big, has been mentioned. And yeah, the more you're going to try to converge the IT OT network, make them interconnected, well, the more doors you're going to open where someone can enter your IT network, start jumping on your OT environment, and obviously start attacking or compromising devices and industrial devices. Yeah, and that's where also it's a big investment now, specifically for the manufacturing side, public sector, and large manufacturing organization. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got just a couple minutes left. And what I want to do is like a rapid, maybe like 1 minute response from each of you. Christina, I'm going to come to you. Then Kieran, and we're going to end with Ralph. And I want you guys to give your number one tip for managing cybersecurity to the audience again. So hopefully everybody leaves with like a little bit of like a, we can protect ourselves mentality as we head off of the stage today. So Christina, number one tip.
I actually gonna cheat a little bit, sorry, but I'll say a couple. So number one would be identify your critical business assets, right? Understand it's just like if you were filing a claim on your house because you had something happen to your house, right? They're gonna ask you what's your assets. So computers, products, data, like identify those things. And then two, I would make sure you have a good managed detection and response. And then three, MFA everywhere, especially on those Rockwell automation and other control system screens or systems.
Ooh, you got a lot into that 1 minute response. So I'm impressed and I'm okay with the cheating. All right, Kieran, your turn. You're up.
I kind of like the cheating there, and I'll try and go at the similar speed here. Look, part of it is understanding what are we actually talking about here. So for me, there's a tremendous benefit in an education program across an organization because people represent a tremendous risk, be that people who are in the business who open up that email, or technology people are maybe so busy they're too busy to actually understand all of the devices. So as Christina says, understand your entire network, understand what you got, understand the threat landscape. You do not have to apply the same level of 100% rigor against every device. So one is education, understanding, and two is where you can put in devices to try and protect us from ourselves, and where you can't put in the education piece, but do try and preempt, do try and educate, and have a great recovery plan for when something inevitably to a certain degree happens.
Great call out on the recovery plan.
I was not that quick on the mute, but at least I didn't start talking while I was muted. All right, so Ralph, your turn to round us out for the day.
Yes, I think one very important one, I would say don't use technology, so that you're protected. Stay at home, do a bit of gardening, and you're going to be super protected, So really, for me, it's MFA, absolutely. MFA all the way. Clearly, it can drastically reduce the volume of attack. Actually, even the US National Security Cyber Chief say that if you do MFA across the board, you can prevent between 80 to 90% of cyber attack. Big number, but I'm going to believe what he's saying, but also another one really is around keep your software up to date. IT hygiene. I think it's so important to patch your software on a periodic basis. The more legacy system you have, the more your patching cycle is going to be long. So if you take 6 months to patch your ERP environment, well, you're going to have a 6 months window where attackers know that you have vulnerability because you're running on a specific software version. So keep your software up to date, ongoing patching. And that's really so important because that's really, for me, I would say the number one security. If everything is up to date, your vendor are giving you the latest patch, the latest security notes, you are already in a good position,
All right. You guys did it. We're under 30 minutes for our total broadcast, but we started 1 minute late, so we do need to wrap. We are at time. As is always the case, I love to see the comments that are coming in and the conversations that are going back and forth with everybody. We'd love to continue to see that, and we will go and engage with that a little bit further over the next couple of hours or days as well. But thank you both for joining us, and thank you everybody who jumped onto the live stream or maybe is joining us later. Happy Third Thursday, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Cheers,
you very
bye.
much.
Thank you.